got an A, and you got nothing.
All right, guys. Did y'all have a good weekend?
Yes, I got a new personal best for speedrunning Minecraft. Very nice.
I didn't know you really could speedrun Minecraft. Birthday parties. The weather was nice. Is anybody contending with allergies? Well, yeah, me too, a little bit. I don't usually.
I saw this hack that works if you're like, I saw this hack that works if your like sinuses are plugged up. So like basically you like hold your tongue to the top of the roof of your mouth and then like press your thumb to your forehead for 20 seconds and it clears your sinuses.
Yeah, I have little weird like pressure techniques like around your nose and like under your like cheekbones. Like you can just like press parts of your face and it can sometimes help your sinuses. My issue is just my eyes were watering yesterday. It was weird. Oh yeah, I had that in first period and it kind of went away. Coffee helped. Like a good hot beverage sometimes helps with congestion. All right, guys, I am recording. Let's get as much done before the fire drill as possible. Bring his jacket out when that happens. It's supposed to be 8 o'clock. Act surprised. Yes.
Everything on her picture is okay.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I don't know. I was just gonna say, guys, the average was really high here. Oops, I'm talking. Chill out. I'm talking. We're starting. This average was really high. Lucy probably did actually get a 10 out of 10. I was gonna say Dan and Caden were the only two to get a perfect 10 out of 10. But yeah, I bet there's gotta be something. Oh, it was number 2. I was kind of basically number 2 was possibly 2 points, but I was kind of like subtracting either a point or like half a point if the person didn't get it perfectly. So Lucy, you didn't quite. Oh, you're really close though. You missed one word. I can bump it up if you really want me to in Power School. But yeah, that's what my justification would be. That you didn't do 2 perfectly. Did anybody? I think Aiden got really close to number 2.
Yes.
I can tell me more about that.
Give him like a little slice of yours.
I mean, because I like seeing those responses, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Let's take care of it and say, right? Let's see. The teacher teaching students. So I had to like tweak a couple things in Cadence. But yeah, guys, everyone look at number 2. Did I not? I meant to make a slide for this. That wasn't cool. I'll make a slide for it tomorrow. But let me just do it right now. I got this. I can do this. All right. What else did y'all do this weekend? You saw what?
I went to the park.
Do you like baseball?
I spent an hour trying to figure out how to change the maturity settings on Funimation so I could watch Freaking Wonder Egg Priority.
Go on Animix Play. I'm sure it's pirated, but it's still
No, there's a Funimation, like, for Wonder Egg Priority, you have to, like, switch your, like, settings to...
It was so bad, though.
What?
It was so bad, though.
I haven't even started
I hated the first 6 episodes and I stopped watching it. After you binge watched it, I was like, damn, this is so bad.
I don't care. I just think it's funny that I watch you for Rose steal more. I just like look at you.
Why is there a stay phone?
It's like something like I said.
Look at these eyes.
But honestly, it's not with them here, but it's hard. What do you want?
The record's 15. Oh my god.
Holy shit. 14 seconds.
What? Oh my god. That's insane. I don't think you can. What? He cleared 40 miles. 40, just like it's a world record. No, it does.
All right. Sorry, second period, kids. Like, we're starting now. So That was like dead air for 5 minutes. Okay, guys, real quick. Why is it so frozen? Oh my gosh. Technology. All right, I promise now we're starting. I'm sorry, guys. Avery? Yeah. So, guys, I literally just made that thing go away. I'm going to have a panic attack if technology doesn't start being nice to me. Okay, stop talking corner, please. All right, guys, so I think like only Caden and maybe one other person, you'll have to tell me, sort of understood what kind of participle was happening here. I did gloss it very heavily, so I wanted people to do really well on this. But I think a lot of y'all get kind of caught up on the same thing. So it's not just the teacher, it's the teacher doing what? Docens discipulus, huh? Teaching, yeah, because what kind of participle is docens, anyone? Yeah, present active. So it's the teacher teaching students. So I think a lot of people, they wanted that to be like a verb or something, which you'd make it a verb by saying the teacher is teaching. At that point, it becomes a verb and not a participle, which is just like verbal adjective. So yeah, docens was a present active participle, so it just means teaching. And I know that sounds awkward. I think that's like probably why some of y'all didn't quite get it, is because the teacher teaching probably sounded a little weird to you and you like didn't want to go with that. So I kind of apologize. Maybe I could have thought of something that sounded a little less awkward. And then I think I could have maybe just like not put in discipulos, and it would have just been the teacher teaching worked at Liberty Tree Academy or whatever, which I can picture a context where that sentence happens, where like maybe you're in a big seminar or lecture hall, Bailey, and someone's like, who is that? And they're like, oh, him? The teacher teaching worked at Liberty Tree Academy. So like, I can't imagine a context for this. But me adding discipulos made it a little hard because it's basically a direct object for the present active participle. So Elena, keep in mind these present active participles do sometimes have their own private direct objects. Whereas perfect passive prepositions sometimes have their own private ablatives of means or agent. But anyway, it's like the teacher teaching students worked and then just at or it worked in. He worked in a place, worked at Liberty Tree Academy. So that's how we would translate that. And like I said, came really close. Anybody else? Who else at least knew it was teaching? Can anybody see that they knew it was teaching, but they kind of like turned it into a verb? Yeah. You put it in the wrong spot. Yeah. You could say the teaching teacher, but then it's like you can't get the students in there. Again, I kind of wish I left the students out. Because, yeah, you can't say the teaching teacher has worked with, yeah. At that point, that'd be like if it was cum discipulis. But anyway, I should have left out discipulos. I know people like Lucy and a few others would have got it completely right if I had done that. Sadie? So worked is the actual verb, right? At the end, we have the actual verb of the sentence, worked. So, and that's why you want to differentiate these. This is a participle, so he's like describing the teacher. What teacher? Oh, the one teaching, the teacher teaching. Whereas this is the actual verb that the teaching teacher does. The teacher teaching students worked, and that's the actual verb. But yeah, I guess you can't put docens in front of magister. If it didn't have a direct object, you totally could. But if your present active participle has a direct object, which it will always, I guess it needs to happen in the English right before said direct object. Any questions about this? This one, it could have been like just straight up captured by the enemy, having been captured by the enemy. Some people wanted to bring in the drop subject before they even got into that, which is fine. Some people said he, comma, having been captured by the enemy, said nothing about his own clan or people. So that's fine. Because, yeah, we talked about this one's weird because the perfect passive participle is like modifying a dropped subject, which just feels weird. It feels weirder than say if it was just like Cicero, nihil dixit. Cicero said nothing, having been captured by the enemy, but it's a drop subject. So, yeah, that was a perfect passive. Both of the participles I asked about were perfect passive, including this. Do I not have the chariti? No, this one, yeah. Frightened or having been frightened by these plots. You could also say we, because that's, again, it's not quite a drop subject. I only say drop subject when it's third person. But it's first person plural, so the subject's like living inside the verb ending. So it's like, we, having been frightened by the plots, will live a wretched life without hope. So both chariti and, what was the one right before that, coptis, were perfect passive. What else did I ask? But y'all did good. I think y'all are doing good with participles, and that we can move on feeling pretty good about it. Vivamus was future because of that long E, and Dixit was perfect. I think like pretty much everyone knew Dixit was perfect, but some people forgot this was future, and that's kind of understandable, honestly. But that long E makes it future because it Vivo Vibra is third conjugation, and third and fourth conjugation verbs are horrible. All right, guys, welcome to chapter 24, which apparently I'm teaching today. Hope all of our slides are in order. There will be a vocabulary test at the end of this week. Next week, we will continue 24, but it will be an interrupted week. Do y'all think I won't see y'all for 1 or 2 days next week because of testing? Anyone?
I think it's 2 days because of, I thought it was like
I have
Thursday.
no idea.
Thursday and Friday? Because most of y'all are just taking one. I think there's a couple that are taking both. Yeah, you too. Okay. So if anything, you might miss my class one more time than other people, but it's so confusing to me. I have no idea. But it sounds like I'll have you guys for Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and I can't guarantee. But it's Thursday and Wednesday. But we will end this week with a vocab quiz, and the grammar quiz might not be until the last week of April. Because I know fatigue is starting to set in a very real way. So keep in mind the end game is coming up fast. We get through this
I
week.
think we only have like a month of school left after.
Yeah, and so right now we have 7 weeks. We get through the.
Do you think?
Yes. Yep.
Matt Parker Green.
Yep.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So once this week is over, we have 6 weeks, and that 6th to last week is the CMAS week. After that, y'all have a 3-day weekend, okay? And so you'll come back for a 4-day week. The last week of April will be a 4-day week. That will be the 5th to last week of the year. And then it'll actually be May, the actual end game. And even May, if you think about it, the last week of May is finals. And then so one of the 3 weeks preceding that in May that aren't finals week is probably going to be a second NWEA. If y'all remember the NWEA from a month and a half ago, we're supposed to, it's not set in stone, but we're going to do that a second time, and that'll be in May. So even May is interrupted by testing. So if you think about how many like normal weeks we have left, it's like 3, 4.
Wow, I don't like that.
It's like this week, last week of April, which is just a 4-day week, and then 2 weeks in May are guaranteed to be like kind of normal. And I just turned off the PowerPoint for some reason. Maybe I didn't? I don't know. Sometimes I have technical issues, and I'm like, am I a boomer? What's wrong with me? We'll never start class. And the fire drill's in 10 minutes. It's cold?
Can I go grab my garbage?
Yeah, you can turn it up, but just don't make it to where the thing overheats. But you can like turn it up a cup. What is it? Yeah, don't go past like 70. Because that's when the heater starts screaming. Oh yeah, y'all are going. Yeah, okay. Chapter 24 is sick. Sorry, I just like remembered what we're doing today. So you're gonna take notes. So get out your notebook, and then let's hope this thing comes back on. I don't know what it's doing. I was like playing with the remote in my hand, like absentmindedly, and I pressed something that made it. It's just dead. Okay, I don't know what happened. All right. So guys, vocab quiz on Friday. We get the word Carthago, Carthaginous, which means Carthage, it's their declension. Fabula, fabuli means story. We get words like fable and fabulous from it. Fabulous literally means like as fantastic as a story. I mean, fantastic means like fantasy, basically. Used to be spelled with a PH. Imperator is a word for commander, but it's also literally the word Luke for emperor. Imperium is the thing that an imperator enjoys, the authority or command or just like power, supreme power even. Perfugium is, we get refuge from that. So what words do we get from that? It looks kind of like fugitive. So someone on the run is like looking for refuge. So refuge or shelter. Servus is slave. It can be masculine or feminine because both men and women were enslaved by ancient Romans and like, you know, basically every ancient culture. Solacium is comfort or relief, like solace. Vulnus vulnerus is wound, like vulnerable. You can add re or red to a verb, and it just kind of means like again or back plus whatever the verb normally means. Ut. Ut is an important conjunction. You guys won't see it too much for in a couple more chapters, but it can mean as or just as. Postea afterwards, it's kind of just like the adverb version of post, which is a preposition. And then a bunch of verbs. Accipio is to accept, so it looks like it. Excipio is more like accept, which no one really uses except the way I just used it. Yeah, but that's not as a verb. That's like a preposition, I think. But more like take or receive, or take out. These are kind of weird. They're easy to get mixed up, but they're literally the same verb with different prefixes. Recipio is to like take back. Like it's the same re that we use in English to mean that you're doing something again. Pello, pellera, you're gonna get it mixed up with, what is it? Always strike, ask, or beseech. Petto, petra, strike, ask, and beseech won't go away. Now you're gonna get mixed up with pello, pellera, which is to strike or push or drive out or banish. We get words like expel. So expello is like to more like banish than just drive out. Like it's just more specifically to banish, as in expel or expulsion. Narrow, narrare is easy to like narrate. Quairo is to ask. It kind of looks like a word like question, which comes from the Latin word questionis. And then redeo is laugh. It doesn't show up too much, but we get words like ridiculous from it, ridicule, risi, risum. Deride, if you deride someone, that doesn't necessarily mean you're making fun of them, but you're probably saying like, hey, this person has an idea that's worth laughing about. Okay, what is chapter 24? It's going to build a little bit on our participles, which I just pronounced weirdly. And basically, it's just these two concepts that sound really crazy, but in practice, they're like fine. But they have exciting, epic-sounding names, so it's kind of fun to learn them. And so it's the ablative absolute and the passive periphrastic. Oh my gosh, sounds crazy, right? But this ablative absolute thing, unfortunately, mostly shows up in this chapter, and then it becomes kind of this like rarity that you don't see too much, but every once in a while it will pop up again. But I wish it showed up more, honestly. But we get to have a lot of fun with this chapter, at least. This is a participial phrase. So we learned that sometimes participles, it's not just like the one word that's modifying a noun. It kind of has its own phrase, like we saw with the teacher teaching students, like the participial phrase would be teaching students. But perfect passive, sometimes they, like I said earlier, have their own ablative of mean grammar. But anyway, these ablative absolutes are participle phrases that are usually at the beginning of a sentence. And what you'll see is basically just a noun in the ablative, like Roma here. Background over the A makes it very clearly ablative. Sorry, some of the type on these slides are kind of small. Not sure what that's about. And then after that, you'll see a perfect passive participle that, as far as I know, is also in the ablative. I don't know why there isn't an A over the A. I mean, background over the A. But so that's how you spot an ablative absolute. You basically see an ablative noun towards the beginning of the sentence with an ablative perfect passive participle. And by that, I mean basically look for something that looks like a verb, but has a noun / adjective style ending, aka a participle. What verb does visa come from? Because visa is kind of our pump. Yeah, video, which means what to to see. Yeah. So something like Roma visa would be an ablative absolute, and we would translate it as like with Rome having been seen. So this is kind of a weird, awkward version of it. Rome having been seen. You can do that, but often you start these ablative absolutes with, like with or since. With is better here. With Rome having been seen, and then it's just a normal sentence. The men were rejoicing. Is weary gaudebant. So yeah, that's basically it. We still might have participle phrases at the beginning of sentences that aren't ablative absolutes. So that'd be something like Romam videntes, which would just be like they, comma, because I can see that it's third plural. They, seeing Rome, were rejoicing, and it turns out our subject would be men. So sometimes we'll still just have regular participle phrases that won't be ablative absolutes. But when your noun at the beginning is an ablative, and it has a perfect passive participle specifically, that is most likely an ablative absolute. And you can translate them starting with since, when, or although. I don't think we'll see many cases where it's although. So usually since or when. So in this case, I like since Rome was seen, or you could say, like I said earlier, when Rome was seen, but not with. Did not say with. Okay, let's use since or when until it tells us that with is okay. All right, so let's just do some practice. His rebus auditus. What would that be? Is he's, these, or those? Anyone? These. Rebus? I haven't seen that word a ton. It's from res rei. A res publica, aka republic, is a public thing. Yeah, so just something about things or like matter, affair. So these matters, auditus? What would auditus be? So that's our perfect passive participle. So the idea here is that we're like, you're supposed to be thinking, okay, these could be dative, but maybe they're ablative. And so, okay, we're starting with this ablative noun phrase. And then we have a perfect passive. Oh, light bulb moment. This is an ablative absolute. That is like the idea of how we're supposed to identify these. But like the big heads up and giveaway for this chapter is that like, yeah, we're going to be seeing them in almost every sentence of this chapter because that's what this chapter is about. So that you usually have an advantage with the various chapters in the textbook because it's like, you know that you're going to be seeing something a lot, and so you're kind of on guard. And then like in chapter 25, you won't be seeing them as much as that. But what would this be? I guess since we're supposed to use since and not with, I need to look at the chapter again to make sure. But since these things, auditus, since these things have been heard, yeah, heard, right? Because this is from audio, audire. I want to say with, like with these things having been heard. Did I just make that up? Okay, I'm on 33. I need to be 23. Doing something. Yeah, that's just participles. I need 24. Rome, having been seen. Seeing Rome, and then we're rejoicing. With. You can say with. Why did I leave with out? Ugh. Ugh. Sorry. Where did I say that? Yeah, so since, with, very small words. This was the last time I was using this this weird PowerPoint I started the 9A kids on at the beginning of the year that has a really like bad color scheme and aesthetic. It's just like very boring and not colorful. It looks like it's trying to be fancy, but it's not. Guys,
Oh my gosh.
get your jacket. Oh, I guess I'm gonna. Should I leave the recording going? I think I am. Guys, calm down.
We're all gonna die.
It is a little quiet, isn't it? Guys, for real, you need to stop working here. Okay. You can go try to stay together. Guys, go to the right. Get out the door. We're apparently not going to the same place. I'm sorry, not right. I mean right.
There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators. There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the
What if
elevator.
it doesn't turn on? Like, actually, do we get to go home? Can we go home? Yes. No, we have here. We have to get back in the building.
There is a fire emergency.
There's only one person. You ready? Yeah, now it's holding the door. Oh.
You did it.
There were still fire emergency. Oh yeah. He's like, am I supposed to come in? Can I go first?
Yeah.
I thought it'd be a little warmer by now.
Let's say things like we're
Springtime chill, yeah. It doesn't look like we have snow days this week, but it is like rainy and stuff.
I just want 6 feet of snow.
Just 6 feet. I do. I kind of want one more snow day. Yeah, one single last snow day. But maybe we won't. Might be over now. All right. Sorry again to Lucy, and was that Callie who I almost had killed? Sorry. Yeah. Not good. Now we know. So that's a new parking lot, but that's not the actual new park. That's just like the substitute parking lot. How long do you think? Like, doesn't it like you can lay asphalt probably in a day?
Yeah.
Why did they not do that in the past 2 weeks?
Mr. Phillips was talking about something with the construction that they like changed the plan.
Well then, tell us we can park in it again if you're not gonna. It just I don't know anything about construction, but it seems like that would be super quick. Those things on the side of the gym, those are locker rooms?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They
They are? You'd have to like almost take turns or like go in groups. But
That's not even my name. That's my high school.
and now I think that can help us join the what's it called, Shasta or whatever. Do more games, play more games. There was some there was a weird rule where it's like, oh, y'all don't have locker rooms, so you can't like.
Well, we got Hills and Camp Locker Room.
I don't know. Maybe there's different ways to work around it. Now we sort of do. Okay, guys, I left my recording going. I'll have to tell second period to skip the first like 10 minutes, and then skip. We only lost 10 minutes, so skip another 10 minutes after the first 10 minutes. But yeah, so I'm realizing as I'm teaching this for the first time in a while that it's actually like pretty easy. Again, like spotting it's not gonna be an issue because like you're gonna see it probably every 3 sentences at least. This chapter, since this is what the chapter's about, there's one other thing we'll get to, but that's also not too bad. But yeah, and I like with, but you can technically use since or when. I like with though because I feel like you don't have to change the tense. Whereas in other contexts that aren't ablative absolutes, perfect passes usually skip that having been. Like we didn't need to say having been captured unless you like felt like that made it sound better. You could have just said captured. But here I think we do generally want the having been part. And so like with seems to work with that in most cases. Like with the ablative having been verbed. That's going to be your typical ablative absolute. But it's trying to use since, like since the ablative has been verbed, that feels kind of weird. And when the ablative was verbed is okay. But I like with the best, and you can just try out different ones. So this would be like with these things having been heard. Or there you probably can leave out the having been. Like with these things heard, he or she, drop subject, began to be afraid. Coipit timera, began to be afraid with these things having been heard. So yeah, it's just kind of a certain way to do a perfect passive participial phrase that communicates something very quickly. And English can't really do this. I mean, like, look, like in Latin it's 3 words. In English, you have to like render it as what, at least 6 words? I guess you can say with these things heard, but it sounds a bit awkward. So you can get it down to 4 words. But this is one of many examples where Latin's like a little quicker than English. It might seem complicated and needlessly like detail oriented, but it is quicker than English. What is this? Let's see. Is this an absolute? So this is just something I was afraid of the event, or I feared the event with the man holding command, with him holding power. This one's weird. What is Ao doing? It's kind of throwing me off. With him? That's where the him is coming from. Weird. Okay. But this is from Teneo Tenero, which is a stronger version of Habeo, whereas Habeo is like to have, Teneo is like to hold or to keep. And so it can be present active, these participles. It doesn't have to be perfect passive. And when it's present active, you want to see an ablative, like this is the him, like with him holding. So the participle and the noun are ablative, but they get their own accusative direct object inside of that participle phrase. So you can translate this as with him holding the power, or since he holds the power. That's kind of weird because since he holds doesn't feel like a way we've been translating present active participles as verbing. So I think the first one feels the best. So again, with seems to be the best way to do this. And then this is really rare, but every once in a while you might have two ablative, or like just like an ablative noun showing up, and there is no participle, but it can still be an ablative absolute, because like a form of sum essa should always be assumed as the default verb. So if you just see something like Kaisara Duka at the beginning, I don't know if this will happen more than once. Like I bet there's like one exercise or like what happens. But you would kind of supply being or having been yourself. So like with Caesar being the leader, we will fear nothing. And again, that's the rarest example of this. It's usually going to have that participle, which could be present active or perfect passive, but will be in the ablative case. So if it's present active, you'll see it ending in E or ibis. Okay, ibis is the plural, third declension ending that present actives get. And if it's perfect passive, it'll be ending in long IS, a long O, or a long A. Why do I know that? Because that's just like what our ablatives are. Perfect passives will be getting these first or second declension endings. So it's either a long A or long O, or an is. Okay, so you're looking for a participle that is in the ablative, basically. That's the dead giveaway. If you see a participle in the ablative towards the beginning of the sentence, whip out a with, and like with the blah, blah, blah having been verb, or with the ablative verbing, if it's present active. All right. The second thing this chapter, we'll review that more, and I'll probably make some more slides. I hate how small the print is here. But the second thing is called the passive periphrastic, which sounds really crazy, but it's not that weird. This is when gerundives will usually appear. So I warned you guys all last chapter, like, oh, the future active and future passive, those two participles are pretty rare. They don't show up too much. The future passive one especially seems really rare. And we have this fancy word gerundive for that future passive participle. But if you see a future passive participle, which the giveaway for that is basically just saying nd towards the end of a verb stem, and then you see a form of sum essa, that is a passive periphrastic. That's all it is. And what this, instead of like, when we were translating future passives by themselves, we had that one where like I sent my student to the school to be taught. Like it was this kind of obligation kind of thing. Like I sent them there in order that he be verbed. This is a stronger sense of obligation. So when you see this passive periphrastic, you use the English helping verb must to translate it. And so famously, well, what's that? The most famous passive periphrastic that we have recorded is one from this guy named Cato the Elder. He is not Cato the Younger, the guy who's friends with Cicero and kills himself rather than be pardoned by Julius Caesar, but instead that dude's grandfather. And it was during the Second Punic War. Apparently he would, like every day in the Senate, he would sign off his like speech by saying Carthago delenda est, which just means Carthage must be destroyed. Because this comes from deleo delera, which means to destroy. And when we see it here with nd in its gerundive form from last chapter, plus a sum essa form, because last chapter it's like we didn't talk about this getting a sum essa, but here it has like a sum essa buddy. That's when you have this must style obligation. The subject must be verb is how we translate this.
Are Carthage? Is that like an
Oh, Carthage is a place. Carthage is a, nowadays it's called Tunisia, but it's right here. It's kind of this northwestern part of Africa, and they fought 3 wars with Rome called the Punic Wars. Right before Rome became a big deal, Rome kind of had to prove itself by conquering this Libyan colony, because that's what it was. Carthage was Libyan settlers, which were from like a place where the Phoenicians hailed from in the Bronze Age. But anyway, just to compare this to something from last chapter, when it's just like a gerundive and not a passive periphrastic, that is like puer and ludo docendus. The boy is to be taught in school. I don't know why I left out in school. But just puer docendus would be the boy is to be taught. That's different than puer docendus est, which the boy must be taught. I don't know what it is, but just adding the sum essa makes it this passive periphrastic kind of thing. And that's about it. This again is the example that we saw of a future passive participle that wasn't a passive periphrastic. I've sent my son to your school to be taught. Yeah, and then the last there's a little tiny asterisk for this part of the chapter, and that is that we now have a new use of our dative. We will see these passive periphastics mostly this chapter, and then I felt like I went like 5 chapters with my 9th graders this year before we saw one again, sadly, because I like them, but they're not super common necessarily in the textbook. When you do see them, though, at least this chapter, there's a chance that there will also be a dative. Because it's, like Carthago delenda est means Carthage must be destroyed. But what if you wanted to communicate by whom the subject is to be verbed? That would not be an ablative of agent, which is what you might expect, but instead it's something called the dative of agent. So who knows how this kind of thing ends up happening? Like, why wouldn't they just use an ablative? But you can actually express the person who is supposed to be doing this obligatory is the word I'm looking for, action, this must be verb action, by putting the noun in the dative. So Carthago Romae delenda est, that's Roma in the dative, or it can be dative there. It doesn't really have anything else to do. It's not Carthage of Rome, but it's genitive. So Carthage must be destroyed by Rome would be the dative of agent, which reminds us of what kind of ablative, Caden? The ablative of agent, right? It's like the same thing, but it's dative for whatever reason. So let's do a couple of examples. This book, Legendus Erit. So now, this never happened. So where they teach this, because like it doesn't. This is technically a future tense passive periphrastic. So we can't use must. That doesn't communicate the future. Well, so just like how can we communicate that this needs to be done, but in the future without using must? This book, by me, with care, must be, what does Lego Legro mean? Must be read. But we could like, how can we make that future? Must kind of sounds future tense to me, honestly, because it's like if you must do something, sometimes it's like in the future, yeah. But the book doesn't think of it that way. So it's like the book will have to be read by me, which sounds kind of awkward. And again, like, you're probably going to see all of, I'm guessing, 3, 4 passive periphrastics this chapter, and maybe 1 or 2 of them will have a dative of agent, but I don't think any of them will not be in the present tense. They'll pretty much always mean it's the present tense. But apparently the book wants you to know that it could technically be future. So if you see the sum essa form as in the future, just try to make it future tense. And apparently you're not supposed to use must for that, but like I wouldn't care if you use must, to be clear. This is more straightforward. It's just a present tense. So this or that woman, anyone? That woman, laudanda est. So let's skip the every or all omnibus part. Now, what is laudo laudare, Allie? To read. No, Lego Legro is to read. Avery?
Oh, what was that?
To praise. Yeah, they're both L words. Allie, that's fine.
Sorry.
No, yeah, I get that. That woman, then what? Laudanda est. Avery? But do the same thing we did with Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. This is that woman. Make it passive. It's happening to that woman. It's not like she's going to do something. Must, not praise. Not that woman must actively praise. The passive periphrastic. Huh? Just be praised. Yeah, just keep it simple. Must be a verb. Okay, so if you see this gerundive with the nd next to sum essa, which will probably be present tense, it just must be verb. So you do need that be. If you left out the be, it wouldn't be passive at that point. And it is, I know you're probably like, what the heck is a periphrastic? But the word passive, hopefully we do understand what that is at this point. And so like make it passive. And by that I mean like let it happen to the subject, which case of that woman. And then omnibus here is our ablative, our dative of agent, so must be praised by all. I don't know why I put. Okay. Mr. Catalanello in August is like, he's a rusty guy. He doesn't know what's going on. His PowerPoints have a weird color scheme. He's making little typos here and there like they normally make. And he's just, I guess he's zonked from a long, restful summer. Because these are weird slides. I need to brush these up a little bit, sorry. Peace, something that looks dative of agenty, petenda erat. So petra is our verb from, I think, last chapter that means to, anyone? To seek. It's a hard one to remember. I have trouble remembering it. But it's like peace what? And this is erat. So it's technically, so how can we say something must be done in the past? Just be creative. I don't even know. Peace, not must be petenda. Yeah, maybe like had to be. Because just using had expresses obligation a little bit. Peace had to be, if this verb means to seek, what is it here, anyone? Yes, peace had to be sought. Yeah, exactly. Lucy, you read the textbook's mind. Peace had to be sought by our leaders. So these passive predicates, once more, can technically be in any tense, but they will probably be present tense, so you can just bust out must, and you don't have to think about it. And if you bust out must for, that sounds weird, for future or past tense paraphrastics, kind of fine. I don't think must like communicates a specific tense to begin with. It's kind of like it could be an obligation that takes place at any point. All right.
Aggressive dipping.
Yeah. Y'all can do homework for the last bit. And I might polish these slides up a little bit. But yeah, it's on the board. Do I have the page number for it? No, this is the vote where the vocab is 196. Oh, the homework from the same page. So 196, your vocab and your homework. And we'll probably do the story tomorrow. We'll do the story. Guys, I just found out I don't have to go to Narnia rehearsal on this coming Saturday. I can have a Saturday morning to myself before. And none of y'all, this is like one. Oh yeah, you're okay. I was gonna say Callie, sorry, you can't go, but it's just, I think it's just a costume. Yeah, so that's why I don't have to go. No, I'm helping the sound cues. I'm kind of just like Miss Boyd's backup person. It's like general backup.